Nick, what's up, man? Thanks so much for joining us this morning. How are we feeling today? Feeling
Feeling
better?
great. How you guys? Yeah, feeling great, man. How you guys doing?
Feeling well, man. Sean Payton, obvious, right? That's where we're going to start. The suitors are many. A couple of weeks ago, him saying he sees about a 7 out of 10 that he returns to Fox. Of course, there's a storyline a couple weeks ago that we had fun with where it's, he's going to come back to the Saints with Tom Brady. Yeah, I don't think that's happening now. Where does Sean go? What's the latest? I mean, we also were like having dreams about maybe the third pick overall. What's the latest on Sean Payton's job search?
Yeah, it's starting to heat up a little bit. He met with Houston last night, Denver today, Carolina end of the week. Kind of interesting that Arizona hasn't scheduled an interview yet, but they did just hire Monty Austin for it. So maybe that happens sometime soon. But I think it's going to be, really interesting. And you kind of handicap each of the spots, and there's pros and cons to each one. You kind of get past some of the previous grossness of the Houston Texans. They have a lot to offer. I mean, they got the picks in the first round. They got a lot of future assets. Nick Caserio has done a really good job of kind of rebuilding their assets while tearing that down. And it seems like they're in a position to kind of build it how they want going forward. So that would be probably extremely appealing to them. And they got a lot of money too. I mean, all these people do. Denver is kind of a little bit of a tough one, just depending on how you view Russell Wilson. I think the ownership there, they own Walmart. Their new owners are going to be extremely committed to winning and kind of being all in a little bit right out of the gates. But, is Russell Wilson salvageable, or is he an anchor to kind of your ability to win games? Carolina, obviously, they got good assets too, ownership with deep pockets. And then, Arizona, I think they got a lot of good players. And if you like Kyler Murray, that's probably a pretty appealing place. Ultimately, though, it just kind of comes down to which team does Sean want. I heard that the meeting with Houston last night went really well. Both sides were impressed with one another. I think that's probably going to be the feeling coming out of a lot of these upcoming meetings. And it's going to be interesting, really, to see what the team is able to get as far as compensation. I think if you're setting your sights on like pick 3 or pick 2 from Houston, maybe even pick 12, I think you're going to be disappointed. I don't think you're getting.
Damn it!
You should.
I don't think you're going to get that stuff. Maybe 12 if there's really nothing else involved if he goes to Houston. But I think it's probably more likely like a future first and maybe a second this year from one of the teams. Or, in the case of Denver, they have a late first and really no second round pick. So maybe like a first and 3/3. I think that's probably more in line with what you're going to see. But like the idea of like you're going in and getting CJ Stroud or Will Levis out of this, I don't think that's going to happen.
What situation do you think, Nick, that Sean Payton wants to walk into? Do you think he wants to walk into a situation where he does have a little bit of a rebuild, but he can make it in his own mold? Or do you think he wants someone that is maybe a veteran team and he's just the next piece and maybe he can be the piece to get them back on track? Like, what feeling do you have?
Are you referencing a team here, Jake? Maybe a team that has a very exciting young quarterback, 2 great defensive ends.
No, like really, honestly, like I swear.
With coaching gaffes on the biggest stage.
Chargers, but I'm just curious what you think Sean Payton wants to do, because if you start over like that, that's a big undertaking. But I agree with you. Like, Houston does have attractive things, although it's probably going to be more work than some of the other places.
So, I mean, the situation you're describing, the Chargers, obviously, like that's kind of like, if you're Sean, that's definitely where you go. But the odds of one of those jobs actually opening up are pretty slim, unless, a guy suddenly quits on his team and decides he wants to go work in TV for a year before coming back to coaching. Like, typically you aren't going to end up with a spot that feels like it's kind of built and ready to go. And even the Saints, had their drawbacks last year coming into that job. So it's usually going to be a rebuild and a lot of pieces that need to come together, and you got to build it up and everything. So, I think what Sean's probably learned this year is that while you're eyeballing some of these spots, they're probably not going to open up. And that's good information to have. Like, if he's waiting on the Chargers job, all signs point to them keeping Staley at this point. So next year you're waiting for it. Is it going to open? I doubt it. So these are kind of the jobs that you want to have. So it's where can you go? Where can you have ownership support? What kind of assets do they have to kind of build it up? I'm telling, like, Houston really feels like, and again, it's weird saying it because they've been so dysfunctional recently and they're so quick to get rid of people. But Houston really does feel like the one. If you are choosing between various rebuilds, like the division's kind of wide open a little bit. Like, yeah, Jacksonville made the playoffs, won a game, but they don't look insurmountable in the near future. and they just have so many assets. And they really actually had like a really good draft this year too. I don't know if people realize that they got Stingley, they got a safety that had 5 interceptions, they got the running back, like they got some decent pieces there. So kind of handicapping it a little bit. Like I was feeling like Arizona, and now like I don't know. Today I wake up and it's just like you're thinking about them. It's like Houston really feels like one that could work.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about Houston to your point. Nick, how much, from what you know about Sean Payton, how much does the desire for power within the structure play here? Because I don't know how much the general public knows about just how much power he wielded here in New Orleans, right? I mean, essentially being almost on the level of an owner in a lot of ways, right? Like a part of like a Super Six, like a true power group that kind of guided the franchise. When he's sitting down and he's interviewing with his teams, how much power is he seeking?
It's interesting. You said like almost on a level with ownership, because like me and Trip were kind of talking about it last night, and he said the same thing. He said Sean had almost the ability to make like splash moves like an owner would. And yeah, I mean, look, you guys saw like the Tommy Stevens trade. Like he wants to be able to do that stuff, and no one's going to tell him no. So I think that's extremely important. And it is interesting because kind of anywhere he goes, there is that general manager kind of in place. And Houston, it's Nick Caserio. And Caserio, we've seen him play the background before behind Bill Belichick in New England. So I don't think that's a huge problem for him. But also when he took this job, there was a desire to build a team as he wanted it to be built. And if Sean is their coach, it's, Nick's kind of answering to Sean in some respects. And that's going to have to be how it is kind of everywhere. Now, I think Sean wants people that feel empowered to share their opinions, to go out and bring decisions to the table. But ultimately, he's going to be the guy that says yes or no on everything. And that's just kind of the way it goes. Like Sean designed the stupid black helmets that everybody hates. Like that's Sean Payton. Like,
what?
Like, yes, he was the one who kind of went through it. And it was proposed a different way. And Sean wanted it to be this way with the, the black and not be white and have the thick mohawk going down it. Like that was Sean. Like that's how involved he is in everything. And that's just going to kind of be who he is. And that's why he's coveted, and he'll go in and change an organization that kind of has the losing culture and everything, because like no detail is too small for him, and he notices everything. He doesn't want his players out there wearing bucket hats at practice. And when Sean says that, that's what goes. Like it is literally every single detail. And if you're giving him your head coaching job, you kind of have to seek control in a lot of areas where you've previously had the opinion and been the person to make those choices, because now that's going to be Sean Payton.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've talked a lot about Sean Payton, and what if they don't get a deal done? What if he decides to return to TV? They don't have a draft choice. Like, what's the move for the Saints this offseason? Like, where do they go? Because, like, we're waiting to see if they get maybe a first-round pick, maybe additional picks in the draft. But let's say that they don't get anything. Where do the Saints go?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, where this thing's going to come to a head, because I think a lot of these teams are going to look at it like, okay, well, if you don't trade him for what we want, you don't get anything. And, we'll go to Shane Steichen or Gannon.
Wait,
or whoever.
Shane's up for a head job, maybe?
I believe so.
Oh,
I mean, his name's
Rich Gannon?
No.
Yeah, Rich Gannon. Yeah.
No, he said Shane Steichen and Rich Gannon.
But
okay.
I want to go back to Shane. Shane was like a quality control guy when I was in San Diego. Okay, just a little glow up there. Okay, I see you, Shane.
Dude, making it to the top. Wait, where's Rich Gannon?
I mean, his name's out there. Yeah, and like Gannon would probably bring you like Frank Reich too, like so that's like a decent, probably a decent setup there. But or whoever it is, Dan Quinn, like we're gonna hire somebody else, and now okay, what do the Saints do? Do they take what the team's offering, or do they wait a year? And I think that's where the dynamics are gonna come into play with leverage. And I think possibly in one of these situations, like say everybody hires someone, and now it's like Houston waiting for Sean, and they have a plan B. What's the Saints' plan B? I mean, I think that's where the leverage play gets interesting here. So like it could end up in like a game of chicken. And look, if they don't trade him, it goes to next year, and it probably is like a 3rd round pick because there's only 1 year left on that deal. The other thing here though is if you're Sean and you've seen Bill Parcells go for a 1st round pick, you saw Bill Belichick go for a 1st round pick, Gruden go for multiple first, like, and now like Holmgren's a 2nd round pick. It's kind of a little bit of, this is what I'm worth. And you want to be on that par with them. Like, you don't want to be the guy. You don't want to be Bruce Arians getting traded for a 5th round pick. Like, I don't know. I think that kind of stuff matters to competitive people. I could be just completely overstating that, but I think there is an element of like, all right, like Parcells went for a first, I want to be traded for a first. Like I don't want to damage the team I'm going to, but at the same time, this needs to reflect like my value of being on par with these Hall of Fame coaches.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, never forget Nick Saban when he won the Natty in 03 had a clause in his contract to get $1 more than the highest paid coach. It's not because he wanted like more money, right? He just wanted to say, no, I am the best. Nick, so you had the line there about, a job opening up because your coach decides he wants to do TV for a year before getting back into coaching. There was a similar kind of jab thrown out by Cam Jordan in his one of his exit interviews here, where he basically alluded to, guys saying they're going to be here and then basically quitting on you. Are there still lingering issues from Sean Payton's departure in that locker room?
I mean, I'm sure people feel like different ways, and it's not even like a jab from what I'm saying. Like he literally did that, and like I think that's the thing that like a lot of people don't understand. Is kind of like, well, why don't they bring Sean back? Why don't they do this? Well, look, if they brought Sean back, like Sean can't ever come back in here and be the same exact person he was, because what happens on August 20th, and it's 150 degrees outside, and people are fighting to get through the end of training camp practice, and Sean's telling you, hey, don't quit on this play. Maybe 90% of the locker room says, okay, like we're behind you, but like, what about the 10% that's looking at him like, hey man, you left us. Like, why would we give you everything? Yep. So, I mean, there's an element of that. And it's just kind of, you just hear people all day long, and it's just kind of like, hey, like you have to look at this situation kind of realistically. And this guy's an amazing coach. And if there was an opportunity to actually bring him back, if I'm the GM, I'm seriously considering it. And I have to figure out how to smooth that over, because it is Sean Payton. And we're talking about him being worth a first round pick. But still, like he did leave the team and he went somewhere else. So I'm sure there are some people that kind of feel like, what the heck, man? Like this was our coach. We were in it with him, and he left us. And I think people are always going to kind of feel that way. And he's going to leave and go coach another team. I mean, that's what he wanted to do, and that's what's going to happen now.
Nick, what about Mickey Loomis's end of the year press conference? He's kind of been very out there about, look, it's not time to blow it up. Okay, we have more pieces than I think kind of maybe we're given credit for. And we still think that we can figure this thing out. What were your biggest takeaways from Loomis?
I thought there were a few things that were pretty interesting. Like they're running their process right now, and they were off yesterday for the holiday. I think everybody's back in the building today. So I think we're going to start seeing some movement probably as soon as today. I wouldn't be surprised to see some coaches get let go in just some different directions on the offensive side of the ball, probably starting with the coordinator. I would be surprised if Carmichael comes back. Just my guess as we sit here now. And look, I think he's a great person. I think he's done a lot of great stuff for the organization. But from my view, it just kind of felt like they didn't have anybody that kind of commanded the room throughout the season. Some things started happening. We would hear players talk about how they had to correct each other for. It kind of felt like like we had players talking about they had false starts and they would have to correct it themselves. And there was just a lot of different stuff kind of going on throughout the season. So I think there's probably going to be some changes on that side of the ball, maybe starting with them. But look, I mean, I thought the biggest takeaway for me from Mickey was saying that like they want to manage the cap back to the middle. And we saw that a little bit last year too. Like there was the all-in push for Deshaun Watson, but outside of that, like, they spent on Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu, but it wasn't like the all money in kind of theory that they operated under before. So I think we're going to see a little bit of that going forward as well. So maybe a little bit of a step back if there is the right quarterback, like say, one of these big money guys actually becomes available. I think we'd see them go all in. But I think otherwise, like they're going to dial back and just try to be the team that wins the NFC South. And as we saw, that goes last night, maybe not, super competitive in the playoffs, but They think they can win the division without being crazy with their cap.
All right, hand up. Nick stopped in the middle of that because I forgot that you can hear us on YouTube, even though we might mute the mics. And I may not have thought I was muting the mics and told Jake that Carmichael just looks like too much of a nerd. So that's on me. I apologize for tripping you up there, Nick. All right, Jake, go ahead. I wanted to get that out there so everybody knew what the boss was about.
All right. I mean, very, very simple cliche one here. On July 26, 2023, who's going to be taking the first snap for the Saints at quarterback right now as we sit months away?
Somebody that's not on the team.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who it is. I think I said this to you guys last week or a couple of weeks ago. Like if Andy Dalton's a quarterback, it's disappointing, and maybe it forces everything back there. But I want to see something different. you know, I kind of feel like Jameis never got a fair shake here, but I just don't think he's going to be on the team. So, I mean, that's, it just kind of feels like that's where it's headed with him. So I think it's going to be somebody else, and it should be somebody else. I think they're going to try very hard to find a quarterback. I mean, DA needs that support. He needs better offense, better coaching on that side of the ball, better quarterback play, all that stuff. So if they can find that somehow, I mean, it is attainable to win the division. But yeah, it's got to be somebody else. Hopefully it's somebody they draft too. Unless you can get a top tier player, I would rather see it as a younger type of guy. Someone that you can kind of build with, find out. And if you're going to take your shot and maybe not be great at that position, at least be like young with upside instead of like old with no upside.
What's your most valuable trade piece outside of Sean Payton to maybe try to get into the first round?
I don't think they have a lot of them. I mean, the only place that I look at, and I don't think they're going to, they should or would, but like the only place you can really tear down is if, like a Brandon Cooks type trade, when they felt like they had good depth at wide receiver, they traded him for first round pick, drafted Stephon Anthony, which was dumb. But I mean, that was a way to get a first round pick. The only position I see where they could maybe do that from, you could pull some talent from cornerback. I mean, they are 4 deep there right now. So, I mean, their most tradable asset where you could theoretically be okay would be, one of those guys, because they got Roby, Taylor, Debo, and Lattimore. So that's really the only spot where I see like they could trade someone and somebody would actually want like one of their guys. If you signed DeMario back, maybe like Pete Werner's a tradable guy. I don't think you get a first round pick for him. So I think it's all at cornerback.
Nick Underhill at Nick_Underhill. We keep him for a mini podcast every single Tuesday here. Nick, thanks so much, man, for giving us your time. Again, go sign up. NewOrleans.football is a site, the best insight. It's not just Nick now. They got Trip on the squad as well. Nick, thank you, man.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.